The Association Reds got off to a less than spectacular start. With delays in their ballpark, Cincinnati was forced to play the first 2 weeks of the season on the road. The Reds weren't set to make their home debut until April 18th, but with poor spring weather, delays in the construction of their ballpark were unavoidable. Mike Kelly's Reds spent most of April on the road, making their home debut on April 25th. To make matters worse, a number of players, including Kelly, were suffering from the flu. By the time the club played their first game at home, Cincinnati was in the cellar of the association standings. When the Reds did finally make their home appearance, the club was treated like royalty. Business manager Frank Bancroft staged an elaborate opening day parade that started from the Grand Hotel in downtown Cincinnati and made the trek down Eastern Avenue to the baseball grounds. The players all arrived in fancy carriages led by Cincinnati's renowned Weber's Band, who played Slide Kelly Slide. Easton Park and all the neighboring buildings were lavishly decorated with colorful buntings and flags, with the outer line of the field defined with omnibuses, dog carts, surrey wagons, and other vehicles. 6,000 East Siders crammed into Easton Park to watch their very own Reds club take on the defending association champion Louisville's. Despite the grand ceremonies and extraordinary enthusiasm for the locals, the Reds lost the contest by a score of 11-9. The following day, the two teams took to the diamond again in what was the first Major League game played on Sunday in the Queen City since 1889. Baseball and fans of the great game were victims of the Blue Law, which restricted many activities on Sunday. Cincinnati's mayor, John Mosby, included baseball in these restrictions. Following a 12-6 loss, all players from both teams were promptly arrested and taken to the police station to be booked. Before a game on May 24th against the Philadelphia Athletics, Cincinnati's police chief Philip Deitch and 75 of his officers were waiting at Easton Park. Dressed in full regimental uniforms, his men marched like a military unit around the grounds. When game time arrived, the players nervously took the field. Philadelphia went to bat first and completed the top of the first inning without incident. But when the Reds' Emmett Siri stepped up to the plate in their half of the inning, Chief Deitch threw up his hands, declared the game over, and arrested all the players. As the season wore on, the Reds continued to lose. However, Mike Kelly certainly lived up to his reputation as a surly and somewhat quirky ballplayer. For instance, in keeping with his Irish roots, Mike Kelly pushed club owners to dress his men in green stockings, something that was rare in those days. The owners refused, but Kelly went ahead and dressed his killers in green stockings anyway. Before games, he frequently took swims in the Ohio River. Once, following a loss, Kelly swigged some whiskey and thought it a good idea to take a night swim. Overdoing his exercises, he nearly drowned. Mike Kelly's star power brought fans out from all over the association. Kelly, who had never played in the league, was treated in grand fashion with every stop. This was never more prominent than when Cincinnati took on Kelly's former team in Boston. Before a game on May 6th, Kelly was presented with a handsome wagonette with an iron gray horse and a 4-foot-high floral horseshoe. All of this while the National Guard Band struck up "Hail to the Chief" and "For He's a Jolly Good Fellow." Kelly's antics and superstar talent were exactly what Reds ownership was looking for when they signed him. They were hoping that his charisma, charm, and popularity would bring the fans out to Easton Park in throngs. Unfortunately, that wouldn't be the case. The talent that surrounded Kelly was subpar at best, and his club lost far more games than they won, never ranking higher than 4th in the standings. To make matters worse, the location of the park provided too remote for fans. Despite every attempt by Reds management to make public transportation available, Easton Park was just too far away from the downtown area. Despite a handful of great crowds, the club only averaged about 1,400 fans per game. By August, the club's management began exploring new sites on the west side of the city, looking for a place to construct a new ballpark for the 1892 season. However, with the club losing tons of money in its current state, It was decided by league leaders and club ownership to suspend the franchise until 1892. So after an apathetic loss to the St. Louis Browns on August 17th, Cincinnati's East End Reds would cease operations. The Milwaukee Brewers of the Western League stepped in and played the rest of Cincinnati's schedule for 1891. While the plan in place was to revive the franchise in a new ballpark for the 1892 season, this turned out not to be. The American Association was collapsing, and a merger between the association and the National League took place in December of 1891. St. Louis, Baltimore, Washington, and Louisville were all accepted into the National League, while the other franchises were paid to go away. Cincinnati never played host to two major league teams again. As time marched on, the 1891 Association Reds, or Kelly's Killers as they would come to be known, would be a scarce footnote to the long and ballyhooed Cincinnati baseball tradition. After the demise of Mike Kelly's Reds, most of the players simply faded into obscurity with the exception of shortstop Jim Canavan, backup catcher Farmer Vaughn, and pitcher Frank Dwyer. All three players returned to Cincinnati, playing for the League Reds. Canavan played for 2 seasons, while Vaughn and Dwyer both went on to have 8 solid years as a Red. Dwyer went on to collect a total of 132 victories for Cincinnati, which ranks 8th on the Reds' all-time wins list, and will eventually land him in the Reds Hall of Fame. Business manager Frank Bancroft went on to fill the same position with the League Reds, where he took his opening day festivities with them. It was he who established opening day as the civic event that it is known as today. For this, Frank Bancroft became known as the father of opening day. Bancroft remained the Reds business manager until 1920. The club honored him with a plaque which was displayed at Crosley Field for more than 4 decades. After the Association Reds vacated Easton Park, the Ball-Yard would continue to host amateur baseball, but nearly became the temporary home of the National League Reds in 1900. During the season, a fire erupted at League Park, destroying the main grandstand, part of the pavilion, and the team's clubhouse. Reds ownership considered relocating the club to the vacant Easton Park until they could build a new facility. Reds ownership abandoned the idea and opted to play a handful of home games on the road while minor adjustments were made to their park in order for the club to finish out the season. The grounds, where Easton Park was once located, still exists today and is currently known as Schmidt Recreation Complex, where a number of baseball diamonds currently sit. 2 of the diamonds overlap where Easton Park once sat. More than 100 years after Mike Kelly's Reds took to the field, the great game of ball is still being played on the site. As for Mike Kelly, he would return to Beantown, where he would play for 2 more pennant winners. However, it was no secret that Kelly's skills were on the decline, and following the 1893 season with the New York Giants, Mike Kelly retired from Major League Baseball. After his retirement, Kelly toured the vaudeville circuit, where he entertained crowds from the stage much like he did on the baseball diamond. On November 8, 1894, Mike Kelly passed away in a Boston hospital from pneumonia. He was 36. The King was gone, forever, to be etched into baseball lore as one of the greatest players of the 19th century. Michael Joseph Kelly was elected to the Baseball Hall of Fame in 1945, where he will forever be enshrined.
I played a game of baseball, I belonged to Casey's 9. The crowd was feeling jolly and the weather it was fine. A noble lot of players I think were never found when the omnibuses landed that day upon the ground. The game was quickly started, they slipped me to the bat. I made 2 strikes as Casey, what arrow striking at. I made the third, the catcher muffed and to the ground it fell. Then I run like a devil to first base when the gang began to yell, "Oh, slide, Kelly, slide, your running's out of grace. Slide, Kelly, slide, stay there, hold your base. If someone doesn't steal you and your batting doesn't fail you, then take you to Australia. Slide, Kelly, slide."